What's up? This is your boy Styles here from westcoaststyles.com. We're in the house tonight with platinum producer Butter, and we got my man Shad Reed here with my co-host, and he's going to go ahead and jump off into this interview. Uh, Butter, thank you for joining us tonight. It's a real honor and a privilege to have you here with us. I really appreciate you coming.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it myself.
For sure. And Shad, this is Butter Shad.
Nice
man, let's just jump right into this, bro.
All right. So starting things off, because I know you have quite an illustrious career, I say we just jump right into it. Starting things off, how did you first get involved with music, and who are some of your earliest musical influences?
Well, I first started getting involved with music just because my house was surrounded with music from my parents. They not only had a band, I used to play drums for their band. And, my dad loved all type of genres of music. So from jazz to just everything. So I was involved with music at home. He tried to teach me guitar, but I never picked it up good. I could pick it up a little bit, but not that good. So that was my earliest influences. And from the people they played is people that I was influenced by prior to producing, like Earth, Wind and Fire and jazz groups like Spyro Gyro, Average White Band. It was just that kind of stuff that introduced me just to music and my love for it.
Oh, wonderful. So you kind of formally trained in music too, as well as just kind of the hip hop, beat making process.
Yeah, well, my dad tried to formally train me guitar, but I did pick up the drums, and I always say that I was self-taught in hip hop, so that's about the size of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this, just to follow up on that. How'd you go from being a musician and surrounded by musicians to actually learning the drum machine, the synthesizers, and all the aspects that come to make it a hip hop beat?
That's a good question. Well, first off, my parents, they believed in what I was doing. I started off DJing first. That was my first love. I would DJ in my room and scratch for hours, and go through records. And, the transition from DJing to production came with just, when hip hop was ushered in, I just loved the people that was making music. My earliest, one of the producers that made me want to even produce was Molly Mall, listening to him and the Juice Crew and just all of that stuff. And then, when Dre and everybody came along and just everything. Pittsburgh, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Pittsburgh is like a melting pot, as far as music, style, everything. Cats wore from anything from, the Dickies to Tim's at the same time. It was just a melting pot of not only just clothing and stuff, but music, so we listened to all type of genres of music. So I went from DJing to wanting to produce. And my parents, they had got me TR-505 drum machine, and I had a little realistic sampler where I had to speed sample and just learning through that process. And then it just, grew a little bit more and more from that.
Cool.
Speaking of Pittsburgh being a melting pot, when you were starting out as a young artist, there was a show that you did where RZA was in the crowd, right?
Yeah, that was in Ohio, and I can still remember because I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe they called him back then Rakim Allah, and I remember the song. Yeah, and it was. I thought it was hard back then. I didn't know who he was. We were up there. It was a talent show or something that we were performing at. Me and a guy, a Big HC, shout out. He actually bought me my first kind of real drum machine because he was a rapper that I was doing music for. But yeah, I remember that vividly, man. And I'm glad you brought that up because I totally forgot about that, man. And that was like hip hop history. and I had no idea. You never know, where people's lives will bring them and where their career will take them.
Do you remember approximately like what year that was?
Hmm.
Well, Prince Rakeem was somewhere like, I know it was right before the Wu-Tang, which was like 1990 or something like that.
Yeah,
89, 90.
Yeah, it might have been around 90, 92, because it was definitely before like the Chronic. So I think the Chronic was 93. So it might have been 91, 92, possibly, But yeah, Rakim Allah. No one does it like the Raw, the Raw, the Raw, the Raw. I remember it, man, and that's crazy. I don't remember much of especially things like that, man, but that was so vivid. It's just edged in my brain.
I feel like a general consensus among kind of the average hip hop fan or music listener would be that Wiz Khalifa put Pittsburgh on the hip hop map. But Dre, Sam Snead, Melman, and you were an incredible team of producers. I'd say you guys were to Aftermath what the Hitmen and Puffy were to Bad Boy. Does it bother you sometimes that Pittsburgh didn't get its shine until Wiz came out?
No, not necessarily. I mean, because we've had other greats, jazz greats and stuff that came from Pittsburgh as well. And I think the fine line is the fact that, maybe because Wiz set up shop there at some point, and did a lot of things back there. That's why certain people weren't noted for putting Pittsburgh on the map. Although, myself, I brought Mailman, had Mailman brought to California, as well as my boy Noel, and just Mel brought a whole bunch of people out there too, producers and rappers, and we totally was about putting Pittsburgh on and whoever we could. But no, it doesn't bother me. I stay in my lane. It is what it is. I'm happy for him. I'm happy that the Berg is getting some kind of shine because there's a lot of talent there.
Can you please share the story and experience of creating Been There, Done That? I would imagine it would be a real game-changing moment for you when you found out that Dre was going to use it as a single for himself.
Yeah, that was interesting. Been There, Done That. I actually, a lot of people don't know this, but I was supposed to be not only a producer as far as the Aftermath album, but I was also an artist. And I took the back seat on being an artist, one, just because I'd never been, wanting to be the front man. I always loved just genuinely, and I could be in the back doing music all day and be okay with that without the shine. So I allowed my boy Noel to take my place. But saying that to say, in me being an artist, in me preparing for what my single would be or what my song would be on the album, Been There, Done That was one of them. Me and Mailman was, I was making a beat and I started messing with a melody for a hook. And then me and Mel just started, putting words to it as far as the hook, not the verses, but the hook early on. When we went to the studio that day, I laid down the hook and we let Dre hear it, and that was a wrap. He was like, yeah, that's it. So I was excited, man. I always say it this way, Aftermath was my college years. I did 1 year college, and the rest of it, my master class was Aftermath, the conception of Aftermath, and I can't take nothing back from that. It was the greatest learning experience I've had musically, thus far.
Tell me about the making of that track, because that is one of the standout tracks from that album. The album, a lot of people like dissed it and stuff like that, but I never really hear anything bad said about Been There and Done That. Tell me about the making of the beat and also the ooh, that you had going out throughout the track. How'd you come up with that concept?
Yeah, initially it was like a guitar hit that I sampled, and I used to play. I learned this early on when I was, I think when you have limited resources, it causes you to be more creative. I think when you have so many things at your fingertips, sometimes it limits you from being as creative as you can be. So in saying that to say, prior to me going to Aftermath, I did all of the, like 7 songs on West Side Connection album, including
Correct. But we'll definitely get into that.
Oh yeah.
So saying that to say, what was interesting, with limited resources, all I had then when I was doing the West Side Connection stuff was a SP1200 drum machine. So with the SP1200, in order for me to make something musical, I had to either, when I got the opportunity to sample sounds into it, like keyboard sounds, I sample them in there so that when I had the opportunity to mess with samples, then I'd have keyboard sounds to play along with it. Mm-hmm. At the time, I definitely wasn't doing no MIDI. I wasn't playing keyboard. I wasn't doing nothing. It was just straight sample mode, and everything was straight digital or analog, analog drum machine. So long story short, I was used to playing sounds in the drum machine. So when I did Been There, Done That, I had a guitar sample, just a guitar hit sample that I was playing with the melody on there. And the concept came from just the melody of playing on the guitar. So I played a couple notes on the guitar and then did the drums, of course, and my whole thing, especially back then, was I'm an advocate for meshing styles together. And, and coming from Pittsburgh and it being such a melting pot, I'm always like, I love like gumbo. So I'm like, okay, well, how could I mix these genres and styles together to make it fresh? And being from Pittsburgh and definitely having some East Coast influences, I definitely utilized certain drum patterns and drums from what I was influenced with early on. So in mixing those drum patterns with the sample guitar, that's how it was kind of birthed initially. Now, once we got into the studio and Dre start touching it, then it's like, oh man, let's bring in some singers, let's get that and the other. So all of the ear candy came from him, the singers. We brought, I think Barbara in and a couple other people and, started to, get the singing parts down and had a string part played. And, that was the conception of it. I think Dre mixed that record about 50 times too.
Wow.
Hey, did you also do the opera part at the end of the song that was used in the video?
What's that?
Did you also do the opera part that was used in the video at the end of the song? Where everybody was like kind of dancing the
no, Scooby-Doo did that.
Okay.
Yeah, Scooby-Doo did that. But there's an interesting story in relation to, oh no, that's not Been There, Done That. That's actually California Love. I didn't know, a lot of people don't know this, but Dre didn't even know that I did music. He just thought I was one of Sam Snead's homeboys for the most part. Either that or he just didn't approach me just out of respect for Sam. And, I used to give Jay Flex beats. Jay Flex used to rap for write for Dre. And, between Snead and Flex and Dre, the combination was just incredible then. So Flex lived in the same building as me and I always used to ask, but let me get some beats just so I could write, because it's not like Dre was sitting around doing beats all day. Yeah. When he got to the studio to do what he needed to do, he'd do it. But it's not like, he was like us on the floor all day doing beats and that's all you just live and eat beats. So I would give Flex beats to write to. And, Flex was at Dre's crib writing at one point and he was writing and Dre came down and heard one of the beats and was like, what's that? Who did that? And that's how, this is prior to him leaving Death Row. Wow. And that's how he found out, he was like, oh, that's Butter. That's Sneeze. But, oh, Butter, he just done the other. And that's how that all came about. But the beat that this is the other thing, man. It's funny how God puts things together. You never know how things is going to come together. So the beat that Flex was writing to that actually introduced me with Dre in relation to production. He knew me from being around, we'd be there for 4th of July at the house and all type of stuff. But that beat actually was the introduction to Aftermath, me going to Aftermath. But it also, that the beat, and I'll remember it always because it's stamped in history now, but that beat was used in the Tupac California Love video. When they do the little breakout thing and it's like a little piano thing that happens. Yeah. It's like a alternate scene, another alternate scene. That's the beat that Dre heard that actually had him have Flex call me. So wow. That's a long story, but No,
that's a great story. It's okay. So you mentioned West Side Connection earlier, and we obviously have to talk about that. And you also mentioned kind of blending of styles. We'll get to Bow Down, but because that's obviously an epic song as well. But one song I want to ask you about first, both you and Johnny Cash drew inspiration from 9 Inch Nails' Hurt. You sampled it for The Gangsta, the Killer, and the Dope Dealer. What was it about that song that inspired you to sample it?
I listened to everything, and I think honestly, I think unconsciously we do certain things that train us for our future. Nothing that we do is for naught. Some people, unless you're wasting your time, nothing we do is for naught. So in saying that to say, from listening to all types of music, I mean, I listen to lounge, to salsa, to rock, to everything. So in saying that to say, I've always been a Trent Reznor 9 Inch Nails fan, just in relation to music in general. And with West Side Connection being what it was, unknowingly, just how ballsy it was, just in general, to pretty much say, okay, I'm gonna use a 9 Inch Nails sample and throw some gangster stuff around it, like that was, without even knowing, that was speaking to the whole movement of West Side Connection in general, but I was definitely a fan of 9 Inch Nails and Trent Reznor, and I liked the sample. I thought it was melodic, and I sampled it, put bass and drums and other stuff around it, and it felt right, and during that time, and I don't know, I know they have a name for it, but you have a greater chance at anything when you go above and beyond. So in saying that to say, in order for me to even get 7 songs on West Side Connection album, I can't even tell you how many beats I shot to Cube. It could have been hundreds, you know what I mean? So in saying that to say, I'm grateful for the ones that he picked. I think they were all right with everybody's voices and everybody, and that, everything came across the way it did. But, that was probably one of the hundreds of beats that I shot him in order to get it on there. You know what I mean?
Wow. That's amazing. Well, first of all, let me just say, as far as the West Side Connection album is concerned, that first one, let me just give you your props on that one, because like I'm telling you, man, even to this day, that's one of my favorite things to play, and it's lasted the test of time, man. And I want to talk about a few tracks from that album. Let's talk about 3 Time Felons.
Yeah,
the making of that song. I mean, when I listen to the beat on there, and you've got like a reverse piano, it sounds like, on there, that please tell me about the making of that track, if you can.
That was another one, man. I mean, at the time I was living in Woodland Hills in a corporate apartment and doing nothing but smoking cigarettes and making beats, man. So in saying that to say, that was one of the many that I end up doing during that time. And it's interesting, you know, when you really think back on, you know, when you're on a grind and you're doing something you love to do, and you're on your, you know, that was one of the many that it could have been 3 a.m. and I'm like, oh man, I'm ready to go to bed, but let me just get one more joint. Let me do one more joint. And you do it, you know, because you try to outdo yourself. You're in competition with yourself each time. You know, you do something that's fire and you're like, man, okay, yeah, I'm on a roll. I'm gonna keep going.
But
So
the keys on that thing were just like, man, they just hit, you know? It's
bro, let me tell you something. All of that stuff was sampled into the SP1200, and I was playing stuff on the SP1200.
wow.
You know, it's like it's amazing, because even when I listen to it today, and I tell certain people when they ask me, you know, and I don't mean to jump ahead, but even in thinking about Bow Down, there's certain sounds in there that if somebody does music and I'm able to tell them, okay, so what happens when you have a sample and you speed it up? What happens to the sample and the sounds? They obviously speed up too. So what happens if you play the key down, the lowest key down on a sample? Obviously everything slows down. So on the technical end of it, like the lead sound on both of those songs, on Bow Down and on both songs,
D10 Felons.
I sampled a Moog in which it had a flutter sound in it. So when you go high, the flutter sound speeds up, and when you go low, it goes slower. So in saying that to say, you know, there's certain things that can't be duplicated. You know, somebody might say, or try to redo it, or this, that, and the other, or they might say, oh man, how did this, that, and the other? And it's from limited resources. When we work limited resources, that's how things are birthed. You know what I mean? So, you know, the piano sounds, far as the reverse piano, that may have been something that Keston did in the mix, as far as the mix, because I definitely did not do a reverse piano as far as the sample.
I'm not sure if it's a reverse piano, but there's definitely a melody in the background of it that goes high and then goes low.
Yeah. Yeah, all of those sounds, bro, were sounds that I had in the SP1200 and strictly played on the pads. So, you know, sometimes I try to get back to the root of that, man, because technology allows for you to have so much going on. It's like you get overwhelmed and your creativity is not like it could be. You know, it's like take away some of the, you know, resources and just knuckle fight. Don't pull out the strap.
Bow Down was a sample?
No, Bow Down was all played, but I had Moog samples in there.
Okay.
So the Moog samples, like I said, I would play, you know, during the
yeah.
Like if you listen to that, when it goes up high, that joint is fluttering real fast because it's a sample that I was playing on the SP1200, you know, and as you know, like that, you know, that was a low bit sample rate on there, so it made everything sound the way it sounded. You know, people with the lo-fi hip hop and everything, people trying to go back to that sound just because, you know, not per se the West Side Connection sound, but just lo-fi. You know, that sound that it gave out was just authentic, and it just gives a certain feel. You know,
a lot of you know, the second album was really cool to me, but it was missing a lot of what Bow Down had, you know, and it was missing a lot of that. It just was missing something, you know. And I think that, man, I you know, it should have been a lot of your production.
Yeah. At the time, I believe, if I'm correct, you know, during the time of that, we may have been doing like the Firm album or something. Like my hands was tied, and I wish I could have been involved with that album, but I wasn't able to in lieu of other commitments. But after that, you know, Cube and I picked up on, you know, War and Peace, and you know, the couple albums after that, you know. But I would have loved to have been involved with that, you know, second West Side Connection album. definitely. But they had some bangers on there. You know, I think
it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It just didn't have the identity of the first album that I loved so much, you know. You know, it didn't have the sound that like Bow Down had, or Three Time Felons had, or the Gangster, the Killer, the Dope Dealer had, or you know, or songs like that. You know, it was missing that flavor to me.
Yeah, I think the first album had kind of a cohesiveness to it, whereas the second one was just like a collection of good songs.
Yeah.
So both solid, but kind of different in how they were, you know, interpreted. And I think one of the reasons is because you did six or seven songs on it. So,
and that's the case in anything, man. And I'm a firm believer in that. You know, especially Dre. Definitely, that's one thing that he taught me subconsciously. Is you know, when you're cohesive and you have a concept album and a concept, and there's one person dealing with that, you know, and it's not just all over the place. You're going to get a cohesiveness some kind of way, and it's some kind of it's a feeling that without saying it, you could feel it. It's an undertone, you know, that makes the whole thing cohesive. So yeah, I think that, you know, they had a bunch of bangers on there, but the cohesiveness may not have been there, like you said, for that reason.
Mm-hmm. You've made noteworthy records with both Cube and Dre in, you know, the mid to late 90s. Did you ever submit music for the NWA reunion album, Not These Niggas Again, when that was a potential project on the horizon?
Nah, because I'm trying to think what year that was.
98, I think.
98?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
98, 99.
No, I didn't. I was doing during that time. I was doing 40 Days and 40 Nights with Exhibit, and I was just into some other stuff. Plus, that was you know, not long after my transition from Aftermath, so I was really trying to stake my claim to be able to know I was noteworthy, to be able to stand on my own and do some stuff.
You brought up Exhibit. Can you talk about the making of 3 Card Molly?
That's one of my favorite joints, 3 Card Molly. Yeah, X, you know, between the three of them, man, I played the beat for X, and X is a big strings lover, man. So, you know, I knew he had did Paparazzi, and that was one of my favorite joints before even linking with him.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wanted to give him something that had, you know, because he could spit, you know, and I wanted him to be able to have something that that was boom bap, but just had strings, and they would just be able to shine on it. I had no idea at the time that he was going to have Saphir and Raz on there, which that combination, you know, was the illest. We were trying to get a record done for them, you know, as far as Golden State Warriors, but it never really came around to it. I wish we would have. But yeah, that was a sample initially that I end up replaying and changing it up a little bit and adding some strings and stuff to it. And, you know, it kind of was what it was. You know, like I said, I think unknowingly we go through certain things that we like and we learn, and unknowingly we train ourselves for the next thing. So, you know, in being self-taught in hip hop and going through so many records and loving so many genres of music, I think it really has prepared me to transition into film and television, you know what I mean? And being able to give a certain feeling for a scene, or, you know, all of those things unknowingly teach us, man, if we allow it to, you know?
Mm-hmm. I've got a question for you, if you don't mind, Shad. Producers during the time when you were coming out, like in the 90s and stuff like that, a lot of them were low key, unless they were like a Dr. Dre or a bigger name or things like that. You kind of wish you could have tagged some of your tracks like they do now. Like, we know producers now, like I know like producers that are not even famous, but I know their name because they tag their tracks at the beginning of the song. They say produced by yo, you know, or whatever, and they let everybody know who they are, and they get more recognition.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in the background to a fault, you know, early on. I mean, the whole time, you know, I've had artists that I've gotten deals and, you know, gotten videos shot for them and didn't want to be in the video and all type of stuff. I mean, I've learned, you know, I don't think anything's a mistake, but I do know that, you know, had I been more vocal on, you know, whether it be a tag or even being visually vocal, nobody's going to promote you like you know, so if you don't, it won't get done, you know. So to a fault, I didn't, you know, but I don't take anything back. You know, I love the path that I've been able to be on. But I do believe that had I stepped out there more or tag my music or said, but you know, at times I did, but it was later. You know, it was later, you know, during like the Aaliyah stuff and other things like that, because, you know, Tim would be so boisterous in relation to who he was.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, okay, you know, I don't want people to automatically just think this is, you know, Timberland did the whole album or something like that. You know, big ups to Tim, but I wanted to make sure that not only sonically, but, you know, people knew that I had my own wherever I was. And, you know, so at times I may mention, you know, that put my name in there or do something, but I never, you know, I always played the background. You know, I feel, you know, as much as we could speak on ourselves, there's nothing like somebody else speaking on you. You know, if somebody else speaks on you, then it's even bigger than yourself, you know, and I try to not let my pride get through the roof, you know, even though it can at times, but I try to suppress that, you know.
Yeah. But the issue is that nobody really did speak about you. You know what I'm saying? I didn't find out about your production on West Side Connection till years later. You know? But during when the album came out and everybody's bumping it in their cars in the streets, nobody was really saying, man, that Butter track was, you know what I mean? You know, and I wish, you know, that your name would have been on that. Like, you know, Butter on the beat, or I don't know, just something to just let us know, man, this is you doing it, you know?
I didn't even know myself, bro. I mean, you know, Caution was the first thing and get me in the door. You know, it's the first professional thing I did in the music industry that got, you know, a beat that got sold. But, you know, and going from that into West Side Connection, I was wet, man. I'm like, I was shocked at even selling a beat. Not the fact that I could sell a beat, but like, yo, I'm selling a beat. Like, this is profitable. You know, I ain't on no street stuff. Like, this is happening. Like, this is business. You know, so I was more on the fact that, like, you know, stoked off, like, man, this is incredible. Let me keep this going, versus me like trying to brand myself. I had no idea. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of kids don't. You know what I mean? You don't know about publishing and all that stuff, man. And some people, you know, learn the hard way, you know, and once you learn, if you don't learn from your mistakes and correct them, you're going to either disappear or you're not going to keep being able to sustain, you know. So, I mean, I had no idea, you know, in relation to branding and all that stuff. I was just happy being present, you know. It wasn't even on a starstruck thing. It was like, yo, like, I'm going to try to bring fire. And it wasn't even about money. It was like, because I just love to do music. To this day, I still do, you know.
Speaking of kind of the industry, that's actually a great segue into one of my questions. How did you and Cube come up with the idea to cover EPMD's Please Listen to My Demo? That's one of my favorite songs on the Peace disc. I don't feel like it gets the love it deserves always.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That was all Cube's idea. All Cube's idea. You know, he mentioned doing, you know, redoing that song, and he mentioned the Phaso Riding High, and was asked me if I could flip it, and, you know, I flipped it, you know. And what's funny is, you know, during the Aftermath time, during that time, I actually had flipped that for, I was going to try to use it for, I think, RC, or one of the artists that Dre had then, but we never used it. You know what I mean? So I had the drums and stuff in the drum machine, so I was able to just, you know, kind of redo it and make it happen. But yeah, a lot of people don't mention that song, but he was spitting game in there. Plus, it's like, you know, that's a good segue in relation to what we even talked about. You know,
exactly.
You know,
sequencing of all that too. That because like right before that, there's that dinner with the CEO skit or insert, and then it transitions right into "When from please listen to my demo to get your ass out my limo." Like perfect.
Yeah, that was all Cube there. He's a brilliant guy, man. Brilliant guy. He definitely has always known and knows what he wants, and wherever he steps, he owns it, and he knows exactly what he wants. So that's always been a great learning experience. And I've always been pleased to, after West Side Connection, anything that I have contributed and did for him, whenever he was pleased, I was definitely pleased, because he's a hard guy to please, but when he's pleased, it's on.
Mm-hmm.
So
what's your fondest memory of working with Aaliyah?
There's so many, man, but I would say probably the fondest memories are just, in order for us to finish her album, her schedule was crazy. She was, at the time, she was filming Queen of the Dam, and she was filming it in Melbourne, Australia. So one of the many fondest memories was just being there. We actually, flew to Melbourne and was there for a month, bro, just doing music, trying to finish her album. And she would film during the day, and then late at night she'd come to the studio. And she's just so sweet, man. Just genuine sweet. Plus, with any artist that I've worked with, I want to, even today, man, with film and television, and me getting my pride out the way, for the most part, I want to please whoever it is that I'm working with. Like, I want them to be happy. Ultimately, I want to be happy. I'm gonna give my all, but I want the artist to be happy. So, and saying that to say, far as fond memories, is when she heard like Never No More, or any of the three that I did, when she heard them, and some of them they started in LA or New York, and we finished a lot of them there. But just whenever she would come to the studio, and I'd be able to play her music and play her ideas, and she was pleased with it, we all could sit down and talk. I flew my wife there too. I was newly married. My wife got to experience that. At times we break away and go on little mini trips while we was there and stuff. But just sitting in the studio with her, man, it was unbelievable. Because one, it was like, it's a dream, not even believing I was there. It was just kind of surreal. And she was so normal and sweet at the same time, and talented, and then just learning so much from her drive. A lot of people complain, but I think when you're operating in your gift and you're doing what you love to do, it's just part of your makeup. I couldn't imagine, especially then, learning a script, being on set the whole day, hair and makeup, learning fight routines and all type of stuff, then coming to the studio, having to learn certain songs or re-sing stuff. And I mean, the grind is real.
Yeah.
And people think it's all fun and games, but in order to sustain, we gotta be not only sharp and mentally fit, but we gotta be physically fit too. We gotta be all around on board and committed, or else some kind of way we're gonna burn out somewhere. So she was a good example of being fit all the way around, and being able to she definitely taught me in relation to being able to be a consistent person. No matter what she was going through, no matter what she was doing, she was just consistently just beautiful and sweet and talented consistently.
But as a producer for you, that had to be kind of difficult, going from a bunch of gangster rappers to an artist like Aaliyah. Was that tough for you?
No, I wouldn't say. I think what made it easier, honestly, what made it easier, because I had did a couple R&B things prior to that. But what made it easier was the team that we were surrounded with. So, Static Major, rest in peace. He was writing the stuff, him and Black and Smokey, part of Player. They were out there and they were writing, and it's I've always loved the process of music in general, and I try to teach this to my sons as well. If you love every part of the process, you look forward to each thing that's birth. It's like a birth that happens, and nothing's for naught. So in saying that to say, the conception of the idea you have in your head, which Dre told me years ago, and it's true to this point, even though technology's changed, he said the hardest thing to do is get what's in your head onto tape, and that's when we were using 2-inch tape or whatnot. But, it's the same concept now. You could have all of these wonderful ideas, but if you can't get them out of your head and for somebody else to be able to understand this beautiful thing you have, then it's for not. But that's one part of the process that's beautiful. And then, you do that until you get that to where you like it. And you're like, man, I love this. This is dope. But it's a whole nother part of the process when somebody comes along and they like it as well, and they have something else to contribute to it. So, long story short, the beautiful thing about that experience and what made it not as hard is I had advocates like Static, Smokey, Black, Tank, other writers that would come alongside and hear what I did, love it, and write to it. And then that birthed a whole nother section of it. So it was just a beat, a concept that you like, but now it got words. It has a new life. Yeah. And you're like, man, I love this. And then you got a whole nother step in which you're like, okay, because it's like a game of jousting. Somebody, you start with the beat, or how this stuff originated. It would start with music. Then lyrics would get written to it. It would get recorded. Then I'd go back in and add live strings or instrumentation or change stuff around to make it fit and put candy around it and just make it what it's going to be. And then you have the whole nother stage of mixing. And then you bring out other stuff in the mix in which you take things out and pull things back and play with stuff and reverse it and put reverb on it and delays, and all of that is love. And then you finish that piece, and then you're like, man, I got a whole nother step. Wait until it gets mastered. Then it gets mastered and it has a whole nother life. So I think, what made it easy is having, advocates to come around to partner to make it a collective force, to make it what it is. I think that, music in general, when it doesn't have that, what technology allows us to do everything ourselves, but it's nothing like when others contribute to what we do with a different idea. I think that's what made the Earth, Wind and Fires and other groups like that, because everybody was the best at what they do, coming together to make something spectacular.
Sure.
Everybody.
Have you ever had something done in mixing or mastering that messed with your track that you weren't pleased with?
What I used to do back in the day to try to prevent that? No, I only thing I could say is at times, and this isn't with necessarily noteworthy artists per se, but there's nothing like if you do something that you think is spectacular and somebody doesn't necessarily grace it with the words that you think that should go on it. You know what I mean? It doesn't, because you know what it's like when it's right. And when it's not right, you're like, yeah, this grilled cheese is all right, but it's too greasy. I'll eat it, but it ain't like the one grandma made me. You know what I mean? So in saying that to say, it's a difference when somebody's able to put the right thing on it, as well as Yeah, that's all I would say towards that.
Okay.
You talk about scoring and doing work in film and TV. How did you get involved with the Proud Family on Disney?
I had a good friend of my wife and I, named Michelle. She used to work at Hyperion, which was the company that did Proud Family. And she introduced me to Bruce, and Bruce is the creator, Bruce Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out Bruce. But Bruce, funniest thing is, like, nothing is for naught, and I will say this up front, like, just like someone who is, how could I say this? It's all music.
Mm-hmm.
But don't get it twisted that you could just go in other avenues of music just because you did one thing or the other. Even though I had accolades and a lot of experience in relation to producing, like, there's no way I would have been able to transition into film and television had it not been for somebody being Bruce knowing about West Side Connection, but not just being a fan. He actually gave me an opportunity. You know what I mean? Because I was wet behind the ears. I'm self-taught hip hop. Yeah, I've done these other records and could play stuff and have this, that, and the other, but dealing with a cartoon is a whole nother beast. It's a whole nother level of commitment. It's a different, everything is different about it. So had it not been for him, I probably wouldn't have got the opportunity. You know what I mean? It was really him that opened the door. Years ago, I used to tell my wife, man, it'd be fun to do a cartoon. But sometimes you say those things and don't know how to come back around, so it end up coming back around. And, Michelle worked there. She introduced me to Bruce. We talked. And at the time they was transitioning, because there was another composer that did like the first season. And it was, I don't know what the deal was with, his name was Kurt. Shout out Kurt. I don't know what their thing was, because he was doing a bunch of shows, but it opened up the opportunity for me to be able to audition to compose for the show. So, they gave me whatever tapes and stuff I needed to look at the video and try to do some stuff to an episode, which I had no idea, man. It was all brand new to me. It was like I was jumping in the water and trying to swim without knowing how to swim at all. Like, first time even getting in the water. Even though I did music, it was such a challenge to do it. But, I had the grace of Bruce walking me through it. But, okay, when you this, that, and the other, you should probably this, that, and the other there. So he walked me through it. And I think with anything that, if you give somebody an opportunity to do something they hadn't done, and you with each victory, you become stronger and stronger. So, with each episode that would get finished, I felt even more like, okay, I can do this. I can do that. I can move on to the next thing, and I think that's with anything, what they say, it's even scientific far as habits. If you could do something over a certain amount of days, it becomes a habit, and then it's,
you master it.
Yeah, and then you're able to master it. So, I think that in and of itself, having an opportunity with relationships and friends, because Michelle was a good friend of ours and mentioned it to Bruce, and just, I never, I've always been an advocate to not burn bridges, so not too many people could say some funky stuff about me and being, a certain way. I try to carry myself that way, and I've learned that the way that God puts things in place, one thing begets another, one relationship begets another, just based off of excellence and being, me doing the best I can do, and being a stand-up person all the way around, to where somebody will want to work with you again, or somebody will think about you when they do the next thing, and I think all of those things are important.
Sure. And that had to be a nice break from the craziness of the music industry, the drama of the music industry, dealing with labels and royalties and this and that, and now you're dealing with a company that is not really as dramatic when it comes to the film side.
Yeah, it was an interesting transition. It was hard during that time in general because when I started doing Proud Family, that was shortly after Aaliyah passed. So it was just hard in general, man. Just, a lot of projections that we all had and was anticipating doing, all that stuff was, and then 9/11, like a lot of stuff just threw everything off, and just thought process and everything was just weird. It was just weird. So it came at an opportune time for me to step into it. And, it was good. It provided, it was fun, but at the same time, I can't say it wasn't challenging, because one thing, and I break it down this way all the time, I was used to getting a certain amount to do a song, write to it, record it, mix it, done.
Mm-hmm.
Now with television, and specifically the Proud Family, even though there's little cues, they call them cues, music cues, the little bumpers and cues that you hear transition through the show, and then the little bits and pieces of music that you hear in the show. What people fail to realize is, in me transitioning and being used to getting paid one thing to do one song, record, mix, done. With television, specifically the Proud Family, when you do a cue, even though it might be 7 seconds long, you have to produce it like it's going to be 4 minutes.
Wow.
Like you put everything into it. Like you do it like it's a song. Like you do it, all the instrumentation and everything, but it's 7 seconds. Now imagine doing that, but having to do it 50 more times per episode. And I had to turn around an episode one a week. So I had a week to do in a perfect scenario. If I was to get the picture on a Tuesday, in a perfect scenario, if I was to get the picture on Tuesday, I would have a whole week to get it done and turn it back around on Tuesday. But with film and television, a lot of times as the composer, we're low on the totem pole. Mm-hmm. Not to say that we're not important, but we're low on the totem pole in respect to there's so many things happening to get it done in production that once it gets down to the mixing of the show and the scoring, they're trying to make up time. Mm. You know what I mean? So they may not get full picture to give to me or the composer in a general sense until a Thursday or Friday. And you still have to turn it around for a Tuesday, right? Mm. So you're doing 50 songs or so, 30, 40, 50 songs within an episode in order to get it done. You're smashing through the whole weekend, no sleep, whatever, just to go around and get it. For maybe a quarter of what I would get for one song.
Wow. Sounds like they're making you earn your money on this one.
Yeah. But the misconception was, I didn't know. I know now, but not knowing then, because you wait a year or so for royalties to come around if a record is successful and you're able to harvest and get what you need to get from that, and you're excited. Television, I had no idea. I thought it might have been kind of the same way, but wasn't all the way privy. So I'm thinking, man, what did I get myself into? Like, this is taking up all my time. I'm working like I'm slave in order, whatever. I can't necessarily. Somebody asked me this about my discography at one point, and they was asking, well, what happened to you from this year to this year. It's like you disappeared or this, that, and the other. But that was really the transition period. You know, what drops off on music picks back up on IMDb in relation to film and television, because it's really hard unless you have some assistance to be able to multitask and do two different things, to be fully committed in music and fully committed in composing is very difficult if you're trying to be excellent, unless you have some kind of assistance. So in saying that to say, you know, at one point I was thinking, man, what have I got myself into? This is crazy. Like, this is like crazy. But I didn't even put into play the fact that, you know, and this was the beautiful thing about TV. So say, for instance, you have a hit single, say Bow Down. Bow Down's a hit. It plays on every time it plays on all these radio stations and this, that, and the other. You know, you receive your performance royalties. You get all that stuff from this single that plays. What I didn't realize that in film and television, each cue of those is like a single.
Wow.
You feel what I'm saying? On the back end. So, you know, at this point, you know, it's almost like, and I said this after, you know, after knowing it, after, you know, retrospect, I'm like, man, I would have did it for $100. Just get you know what I mean? Because as much work as you put in on the front end, you know, it's great because it creates, it's something else. You know, it creates, you know, residuals somewhere else for you to be able to benefit from and capitalize on. You know what I mean? It's definitely a beast though, and I think that's why there's not a lot of people in it, because you gotta humble yourself. You got to definitely be in a place to where you're trying to definitely please the director and the producers. Yeah. You know, it's, you know, you got to be able to get in their head and think what it is they would want. You got to be able to understand. And I know I might be going off path, but I'm just, if somebody maybe you could gain from it, you got to be able to not only understand what music could go in a scene, but then also you got to be able to think about genres and other things to articulate how you create to put something in a scene, you know. And if you're one-dimensional, that's not gonna happen. So in saying that to say, like I said earlier, you know, in digging through samples and loving all types of music and listening to all types of things, it prepared me for a lot of the stuff I do now.
Got it.
Because if I have to do something they're supposed to be in France, I done bought records overseas. I didn't listen to certain things. I like certain composers. I used to, love Ennio Morricone strings and how he did stuff. And, you can put all that stuff together and it happens subconsciously. I'm sure there's certain people that meticulously think about, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. But, I think a lot of stuff for myself happens subconsciously just from exposing myself to so many things. Mm-hmm. Subconsciously, it comes out another way.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I've heard there are rumblings about a Proud Family revival. Are you involved in that at all?
Yeah, I am involved in that. I'm not involved with that as a composer, but in relation to, there's certain cues that I'll still be involved with that definitely could not be remade. One of them being something that Cedric, the entertainer, and myself did for the character Bobby. He's the character Bobby. He got a song, and there's other little cues and stuff that'll be in the show. But no, I'm not going to be on it as of right now. I'm not going to be on it as composer, but who knows? It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing, man. You really took everybody tonight to Production 101. Producers out there, I know they got a lot of gain from this, especially those that are looking to do stuff in television and film and things like that. So I really appreciate everything you said tonight, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you and an honor. And like I said, man, that first West Side Connection album, woo, god damn, it's still knocks to this day, brother. So I really appreciate you and everything you've done in this business. Chad, is there anything that you wanted to end with, or
no?
are you good?
You know, we covered a lot of ground wonderfully, like Tim said, and great conversation, great insight. That being said, is there anything, Butter, that you want to close with or comment on that we haven't talked about?
I do, but I can't even mention it. There's something. I'm gonna tell you something, man. God is good. I'm telling you, dude. There's something that I'm working on right now, and it's on the last stages, man. And I'm so excited to be involved with it. And it's a testament to, you know, I always say it this way: God is no respecter of persons. You know, we all have gifts and talents in us, and it doesn't matter at what level you're on. You could still make things happen. Like, there's people that do way more with way less. I try to remind myself that all the time. You know, there's certain peers that I know that capitalize on things from me that I haven't capitalized on. Like, people make things happen. So in saying that, to say there are certain projects that I'm working on that you know, very excited about. And the only reason I'm not mentioning one specifically is because they're not a cat out of the bag on what's happening with it. But it is dealing with television. I will say that. As well as I'm doing a record for my wife, a gospel record. I mean, I'm not stuck, bro. I'm trying to be all over the place. You know what I mean? And not spreading myself thin. It's just I'm a lover of music. You know what I mean? What else is going on? Oh, can't forget. There's another animation. I did an animation with a brother, Jamal Bradley, last year and a half ago, called Substance. He has another animation that's coming out too, which we used the instrumental to Ice Cube Smoke Some Weed on it.
Okay.
So look at the hashtag girl power, and it'll pop up or whatnot. But it's also on on my IG page and all that stuff. But just trying to stay connected as far as animation and film and television, as well as production as well. So I thank you guys for having me. I'm grateful. And it was a great interview. It's always good to talk about things that could build other people up, let people see process, what the process is and how to avoid certain pitfalls, because we all got them.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I really appreciate is that, some of the tracks that you've done, I know that you talked about a process being made. And I think that a lot of tracks today are just done quickly and they're not really polished to the point that they could really be, and because they're just done quickly in the studio and all right, let's lay this track down and let's record over it. We're done and let's move on, as opposed to building it and creating it, so that's my opinion. So
my son, in closing, my son asked me something, and he's transitioned since this point, but at some point, he was doing beats, and we had the conversation of certain websites that offered loop packs and other stuff like that. And we had the conversation of, he's like, but Dad, this is just like, when y'all would sample, but we do it different now. Like we get our loops and stuff from here, this, that, and the other. And I had to explain that it's not the same. When I would search for samples, be in Canada or Taiwan or be somewhere, and I'm like, where's the record shop? I'm looking for like records and like stuff. The whole goal was to try to find things that nobody had that sounded different than nobody, to where when somebody heard it, it's like, what's that? Like how, what, know? So I think we've lost that, even though, you can go through a Splice or go through one of those sites that have certain loop packs and they're good for what they are. I mean, you can get a lot of good things from there, but in saying that, to say, when it comes to loops and stuff, if you listen through things, because what I did was I did an example. I said, okay, play some of the loops that's on here. I pulled out my phone. I hit Shazam. Every single one popped up with a song. And these are just the loops before anybody even messed with them. So I'm like, that wouldn't happen with us. You know, if we had a sample that nobody heard that joint until it comes out unless it leaks some kind of way. So in saying that to say, it causes you to not use your creative mind because you got so much resources. You're like, oh man, I ain't got to think about a melody. There's 97 melodies I could pick from and just put some 808s to it and it'd be humping, just like what's on the radio. Mm-hmm. And it's good for that chemistry. I mean, that's the chemistry. It puts it together just like, you know, the machine would have you to put it together. But what happens when you want to go left? You know, when you want to go off center, when you don't want to go along with that, you know, you have to dig outside of, you know, the trough. you can't eat in the same trough as all the other animals. You know, you got to go somewhere else to get your feed, you know?
Wow.
Really?
Lessons. Woo. Shad, do you want to go ahead and end, or do you want to
I just say, thank you again so much, Butter, for speaking with us. It's been a privilege, and with all the stuff, if and when you're ready to talk about it, when you're able to, you always have a platform here.
I appreciate that. I will too. Yeah, I will.
And lastly, can you do us the honor of giving us a drop before we go?
For WestCoastStyles.com.
West Coast Styles, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, sure. This is Butter, and I have been blessed to be on West Coast Styles and chop it up with Styles and shit. Peace.
Peace. All right, brother. I'm gonna go ahead and let you get about to your business. Have a wonderful evening with your family, and thank you once again. And like I said, like Shad said, you know, you got a platform whenever you need it, bro.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
You too, bro. Peace.
Peace.